Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Andy. The name of the channel is The Blessing is Real. And today I have with me Kiersten Richardson. And I'm going to ask her a few questions. And along the way, she's just going to share with us her testimony and how God brought her to where she is now and how her life is now that she's been introduced to Jesus and now that she's living for Him. So, Kiersten, the first question that I wanted to ask is, tell us the first time that you remember hearing about spiritual things, whether it's about Jesus or the Bible, or even if it's outside of Christianity, just anything along those lines.
I think just growing up, I knew, I don't know, I don't remember any specific time of somebody telling me about Jesus or the Bible or things like that, or talking to me about those things. But it was a known thing to believe in Jesus and that you were supposed to believe in Jesus. And
It's like growing up, like everybody around you kind of
nobody talked about it, but it was
like because we're in the West,
yeah.
or Western country, like everybody's like this. In the East, there's Buddhism. Over here, there's Islam, and over here, there's Christianity. It's kind of like that.
Yeah, it was pretty much like that. And I remember my grandma, she went to church. As kids, we never really went to church. My mom grew up, she grew up, I can't think of what it was, Jehovah's Witness.
Oh, okay.
And so in her family, I think it was like they were on and off again, kind of not fully committed. And so we never went to church really, and we would every now and again go to a church. We always went to a Christian church. We didn't go to Jehovah's Witness church, but it wasn't enough to know for me to learn anything.
Yeah.
And so
was it kind of not a whole lot of Bible, or was it kind of just?
When we did go, I was a kid. I don't really remember.
Like how?
If they got in the Bible or anything like that.
How old would you say you were?
7 maybe.
Yeah, that's pretty young.
Yeah. And we wouldn't go like every Sunday.
Right.
For a little while we would go, and then we would stop going until eventually we just stopped going.
So whenever you're growing up and you say basically you believe in Jesus, like because everybody is a Christian, by name at least, and everybody who you kind of know is everybody believes in Jesus. That's kind of how I remember growing up too. Like the word atheist wasn't something that I really encountered much in my life. So, but while you're growing up, do you have any thoughts of Jesus? Like, I love Jesus, I want to seek Jesus, or was it just kind of
growing up? Like, I remember it's kind of funny the way that I don't know where I got this from, and it's backwards the way that I thought of it in my head when I was younger, but I never had anybody real close to me pass away. My great-grandpa passed away, and he read the Bible twice. What I didn't know is that Jehovah's Witness was different. They had a different Bible and stuff like that. And I never understood that as a kid. And so I just knew that he read the Bible twice. I'm like, well, he's in heaven, you know?
Yeah.
And so
he read the
I'm not really, honestly, I'm not positive on that.
Yeah.
Because he was my mom's dad.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how it all got handed down, if they all were Jehovah's Witness or how it all came about. But I just remember as a kid, I remembered that, and hearing that as a kid, I thought that man, he must be a really, righteous man. He's reading the Bible, and,
It's kind of unheard of.
yeah, you don't hear, it was just like not heard of for anybody to read the Bible ever. So when it was a big deal.
Right.
And anyway, so I remember when he passed away, I asked my mom one time if he can see everything I do. Because I guess I was feeling guilty about something, and I wouldn't lie after that. But it's so backwards because it's God, the one that is watching me and can see all those things. So I wish, growing up, my mom would have taught me that or told me that.
Yeah.
But
you're worried somebody in heaven could look down and see you rather than God the Father.
Right, yeah.
That's why you say it's backwards. Okay.
Yeah. So, but that's the only thing I really remember about, like, I guess it was a type of conviction, but I just wasn't taught correctly. Right. I guess.
So, when you're growing up, kind of, you know about Jesus, you believe in Jesus. What was your life like? Kind of once you get older and you kind of know right from wrong. You go back as you want or as recent as you want, but what was your life like? Just what were you involved in?
I'd say like I was kind of just a follower to everybody else, and I was just so insecure. Also, I think that's why I followed everybody else, because I wanted to be like everybody else, and I was so insecure with myself. I always thought I wasn't good enough, and so I would always try to be like this person who just seemed like they were just loved by everybody and just so awesome, and I would,
like friends at school,
things like that, and
popularity.
Yeah, and I would change things about myself to be like somebody else, and I would do things that they were doing, and not blaming it on them. It was my own decision, but I think it all led back to I was so insecure. Like when it came to boys, I would just give them whatever they wanted because I wanted them to like me. And so I gave them what I thought they wanted for them to be able to like me. And when I look back on it now, especially having my daughter, I think how awful that was, and I would never want my daughter to ever feel that way or think that way about herself. And because in the end, when I feel like when I was doing those things, I was showing them how to disrespect me. Like I didn't respect myself, so of course they're not going to respect me.
Right.
And so I would just really just follow the crowd, and then also seeing how my family was, we were real like it was just normal to drink, and it was normal to smoke cigarettes and party with your friends and stuff like that, and it was just in my family, like that was just what you do, and so that's what I kind of fell into as an adult or as a teenager, even.
Yeah. Now, what you just kind of going back to what you said about how you were insecure and you did what others wanted you to do, and you wouldn't want that for your daughter. Like, I know you kind of went into it a bit, but if you could just speak to somebody, if you could speak to, 16-year-old Kiersten, what would your message be to them right now in hindsight? Just a little deeper on what exactly would you say to 16-year-old Kiersten or that other 15, 16-year-old boy or girl that's out there that's listening to you right now?
What I would say is, and this is what I've always told myself that I am going to teach my daughter as she gets older, is now that I see it as a follower of Christ, what really makes someone beautiful is doing the exact opposite of the things I was doing to try to be beautiful. And it's so much more like in my mind, like it's so crazy to me that I ever thought that drinking and partying and having sex before marriage and uh, throwing myself at men, things like that. It's so crazy to me that I ever thought that that was gonna make somebody look at me like, oh wow, she's beautiful.
Mm.
And now when I look at it, and what I'm gonna tell my daughter growing up is what makes someone beautiful is being kind and forgiving and not gossiping and not drinking, not smoking, because it's just those things now when I look back at it are just ugly things, and they're not cool like everybody made them out to be. It's kind of an immature way of thinking that I had, I think, and I always think of the First Peter verse 3, or chapter 3, where it talks about how I should have wrote it down. Beauty doesn't come from the hairstyles and the jewelry and the clothes that you wear and things like that, but it comes from your heart.
Mm-hmm.
And even now I see some adults still having that mindset of trying to be beautiful in a way of the outward appearance, and it's so much more important of the inner beauty than it is the outer, and it makes such a big difference. Like if I was, and I would also teach my daughter in the first place because I was always chasing after I wanted to be with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I would also teach her, that that's not important, that what's important is your relationship with God, and if His will is for you to be with a certain person, then it'll be done, and you'll know that it's His will when you're following Him and not looking for somebody yourself, because that makes it your own will. And
that's good. First Peter 3:3, I think, is what your beauty should not
yes.
come from outward adornment, such as elaborate hairstyles, the wearing of gold jewelry, or fine clothes. Rather, it should be that of your inner self, that the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is of great worth in God's sight. Yeah, I love that. First Peter 3 and 4. I didn't have it by heart either. I just googled it, but man, everything you just said right there is a message that I know that so many need to hear, and there's so much. It's like it does come from insecurity. I don't know if everybody realizes that, like you do now, but just that place of whether it's thinking you need to be with somebody or fit in by doing these things that, as you said, you think make you beautiful, but it just takes away from beauty.
Mm-hmm.
But the other verse that came to mind was Isaiah 61:3, where he talks about giving people beauty for ashes, and the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness, and so on. But just made me think of those verses as you were speaking. And but did you want to continue with that? Do you have more to say?
I was also going to add, I can't remember now what it was.
I just want to throw in that verse that that you were referencing. But like you said, teaching your daughter and
yeah, I was going to say, I think also, like, I noticed I would always, like, not just by the way I acted, but, like, even social media, like, I would post constantly. Like, I was always posting something, like, and it was just so I could get that security from other people. And most of the time I didn't, I always ended up like, oh, well, and then I'd look at other people and I'd say, well, look at how many likes they have, just crazy stuff like that. And I think that's a big, like, that's one thing that you can tell from somebody, not necessarily because, you never know somebody's life, but that's what I feel like if I see somebody constantly posting and stuff like that, it's sad to me, because I remember I was there,
Yeah.
and it's sad, that somebody has to feel that they have to get their security and their cup filled by the world,
Mhm.
and it's never gonna fill it. So you're always, I think that's why you constantly do it, because you just never get enough. You never
Chasing
get what you want, and so
dopamine
you have to
hit.
keep on. Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, that's what it's like, chasing that dopamine hit. It's addictive. People they want to have that like and that comment, and that reassurance
Yeah.
that somebody out there thinks you're. And it's always the highlight reel of your life too. You put all the good stuff on Facebook or everything else, but it's not really reality because nobody's life looks perfect like that. There's ups and downs. There's highs and lows. But yeah, I agree. It's a sad thing when people they're looking for their, I don't know, joy or some sort of, like you said, security and assurance from. It's the new epidemic, or at least one of them.
Yeah.
Social media and how
That's
so many want that.
that's another thing I want Josie to really grow up to know, because it's getting bigger and bigger, and I want her to grow up to know, her worth through Christ, so that she doesn't have to, get it from everybody else or on social media, or have to be constantly texting somebody or constantly, because that's kind of how I was. Like, if I didn't have somebody texting me or something, I was like always trying to, get somebody to talk to or post so people would like. And I don't ever have my phone on me anymore. I lose it most of the time.
Yeah. So do you think that anybody would have known that about you? Like, Kiersten's really insecure, or would people be like, "Wow, Kiersten really has it all. She's the, I don't know, the popular girl, or the girl I would like to be like or hang with." Younger people look up to, or they be like, they can see that you're not really happy or insecure. How do people view you?
I think I feel like nobody really saw that I was any different than anybody else. Besides the people that were closest to me, like my parents, I know could see that I was insecure, because I couldn't even I was insecure. But like my dad would tell me, why are you so insecure? We told you your whole life how pretty you are, and this and that. Like, we never gave you reason to feel like you're not, and it didn't have to do with that, and I would just, I'm like, I'm not insecure, but I was so insecure. But
So that is what it's really important for people to see that, because that's what I try to get across to people also. Just because somebody looks happy on the outside, or looks like they got the awesome relationship, the the teenage boyfriend girlfriend thing that everybody looks to and say, "Oh, I wish I had that," doesn't mean they're actually happy on the inside. They actually, people probably thought you were quite happy, but you really weren't on the inside. Would you say that's true? Yeah. I wish more people. What you're saying is really important. I really wish more people understood that, but I hope that more people through this video will hear that, and uh, you know those who are listening will share it with people who need to hear it. Young. It's a message for teenagers and for adults, because as we're raising teenagers, we need to, like you said, you got your daughter who's very young, and you got one on the way, and whether that or this insecurity doesn't go away when you reach your 30s and 40s and 50s, when you have a family and a career. If you still don't have Jesus, you're still going to be insecure, right?
Yeah.
So what you're saying is really, really important. But is there any more that you want to add on as far as just that whole part of your life?
I just want to add one more thing. I've noticed, because I have struggled here recently with my insecurity, I guess just being pregnant and my body's changing and everything. And my daughter's getting to the age where she's noticing everything and she's copying everything. And I haven't noticed her do this specific thing, but like I know I'll look at the mirror and I'll, say things about myself like I'm so fat or, just comments or whatever.
Yeah.
And I never seen her copy me in those things. I've seen her copy me in a lot of other things. But I knew that she was going to, if I kept on, that she was going to see that I was talking about myself that way.
Yeah.
And that she was going to pick up on that and kind of rub off on her.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like the biggest thing in my life that's really like, I think kept me going is I have to be an example for her because I don't want her to have to go through what I went through.
Yeah.
I want her to know the truth
Mm-hmm.
and know what God says about her and things like that. And so I have to be on guard of what I do all the time because she's watching me all the time.
Yeah.
And so I just want to add that.
I think also it kind of makes people think, or especially the little ones who are so impressionable, it makes them think that that's what's important, how I look.
Yeah.
If we're saying either good or bad about ourselves, either way, the message we're getting across is this is what's important, how I look.
Yeah.
We don't want to pass that on.
Yeah, exactly.
Either. Just speaking to Josie, all of y'all who are watching this are part of our church, most of y'all at least. Hopefully it'll go beyond that, but if I'm sure y'all probably notice sometimes I'm talking behind the pulpit and I not saying anything funny, but I just start laughing. 99% of the time it's Josie. She's bouncing around or doing a forward roll in the aisle. She's doing her thing. She's doing whatever she does, and she keeps us
Entertained.
full of joy and entertained. Yeah, but that's why most of the time, just kind of going beyond that whole part of feeling insecure and that part of your life. But was your life were you trying to live a good moral life? Were you saying, I know Jesus is real. I know God's up there watching. Kind of before you came to God, or were you just like, I'm just here to have a good time. I like to party. I like to do my thing. What was that like? That part of your life like?
Really, I thought I was a good person. Looking back, I wasn't. I thought I wasn't hurting anybody. I wasn't. It's so crazy because I remember thinking, I'd hear others gossip, and then I'd say, "Oh, I'm a gossip," and then I'd go and gossip about those people gossiping, and just things like that. I just thought I thought I was such a good person. I thought I didn't do anything wrong, and I never really took any responsibility for what I did. I just thought I was a good person, but I was so blind to everything, and now I see that I was not, and that there was a lot of cleansing that I needed to do.
Definitely. Yeah, we all got to come to that place if we're going to be born again and walk with God. I just wish I wish more people understood that we're not. The Bible says that if we really look at ourselves and compare ourselves to the Word, that we're not good. We need our Savior who is good.
Mm-hmm.
But now I would want to move on to how did you come to learn about Jesus, or was it a radical moment? Was it little by little? How did that go? You got sort of introduced to Jesus, introduced to the gospel, the Bible.
I think it was little by little. I didn't just jump in one day. I remember just at work, Melody would tell me the biggest thing was my relationship wasn't very healthy and at all. And she had shared with me things that she went through, which hers was a little different because she was married, their testimony. And and it was like, I think I really just I wanted to hear what Melody said because I was getting so much worldly advice of people saying things like, talking about my husband, saying, oh, well, you just need to leave him, and he's, he's all wrong or whatever. And I was getting real godly advice, from Melody, so I just really clung to that.
Yeah.
And I saw how her testimony played out and how Bobby changed and everything, and I wanted that. That's how it started, and then the more, like, I remember I went to church one time, and then I didn't come back, and then I would get on the Bible studies, and then slowly I stopped getting on the Bible studies, and I kind of fell back in to doing, to just not really, I wouldn't say going back into doing the worldly things like getting drunk and things like that, because I was pregnant.
Yeah.
But just the anger and the, like, not taking any blame on myself, but he's in the wrong always, and it's never me, and just nagging and things like that instead of turning to the Lord. And then I guess I feel like I really didn't come back to the Lord completely until I had Josie, and things were pretty bad again. And I started working here in Stanford, and I'd go to the bank and get to talk to Melody and just hear that godly advice again. And when I was surrounded by worldly people. And so that's why I do to me, it's so important to surround yourself, who you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
Because I saw the difference it made in my life.
Yeah.
When I was surrounded, I saw myself go back when I was surrounded by the worldly people and fall back into everything that I was doing before. And so when I started started working, and then I decided I was going to go to church. I went to a different church, and then I ended up stopped going to that church. It was in Anson, so I stopped going to that church, and then I started going to y'all's church, and that was after I started reading the Bible for myself. And it was really like Melody shared with me so many things, and I liked how they sounded, and I wanted it for myself. But once it didn't really hit me, and I think that was my problem with that. I just needed to get in the Word myself. And so once I got in the Word myself, and I was like, I was in Bible study and I was going to church. I was like, they talked about this at church, or they talked about this, or I've heard Melody say this. And it's like, it showed me that y'all were preaching truly what the Word says, because I'm reading it for myself. And it also told me, like, instead of somebody else telling me what it was me reading it for myself, and it was God telling me himself. And that's when it really hit me. And I started to give things up that I was holding on to, the worldly things that I was holding on to. And drinking was a big one that I gave up. And my husband actually quit drinking before I did. And then one night we had a party at our house, and there was some people there, and I was drinking, and Josie was real small. She was just crawling, and there was some things that went on that after I was drinking, so I was oblivious to it. And when the next day I got to thinking about some of the things that went on, and it scared me because my daughter was there. And so I decided that I wasn't going to drink anymore. And so I quit drinking. And then even then, there was still things, that I felt like I needed to give up. The biggest thing that I've said always was honor God and He'll honor me. And I remember Melody telling me that, and that just to this day I still hold on to that. And it really is true. Like everything that I've honored God in, He's honored me, and He's made a way. And I think to myself, with my husband, it wasn't, we got pregnant before we were married. We were in a very worldly relationship. And I know that that wasn't God's will for me to be in that relationship and get pregnant before marriage and things like that. But once I started giving my life to Him and honoring Him, it was like He fixed my mess that I made of His plan. And I got back on track with His plan, what He wanted me to be, what He wanted me to do. And so that's just awesome to me how He does that. How, like, even things like before we were married, we just got married a year ago last week. And I read 1 Corinthians. I can't remember what verse it was, but it was in 1 Corinthians, and it was talking about sex before marriage and things like that. And it really spoke to me because I remember praying, what else do I need to give up for me to honor you? And what else do I need to let go of? That what else am I doing that isn't honoring you? And I was still having sex before marriage, even though we lived together, we had a kid together and everything. And so I surrendered that to Him, and knowing, like, it was even like I knew it might not go the way that I wanted to, but I knew that I had to do it anyways. And I said to myself, even if me doing this, causes my husband or my boyfriend then to leave me or whatever it may be, then I have to be okay with it because I know it's your plan, because it says it in your word. And so, and a week later, maybe 2 weeks, I can't remember. It was soon after we were married. Really soon. Yeah. Maybe not a week. We had to get license and everything. But it was really soon afterwards.
As possible.
Yeah. And so He just honored, I just saw how He honored me in that too. And how He's still working as I continue to humble myself, and when an argument's about to start, I'll leave and I'll go to my room and pray. It's like I see Him working in through my husband also. And I was actually just telling a friend about a verse, how you as a wife can save your husband by your conduct. And I always remember that also. Not only, I have to watch the way that I act for my daughter, but for my husband too. Yeah. And anyways, it's crazy how I can see God working through my husband. I don't even know that He knows that it's happening. Yeah. Like He's humbling Himself, and even when I get in my flesh and I get angry or whatever, and I want to, be prideful, he's humbling himself,
Yeah.
and it's just crazy. You know,
Yeah.
he truly is. You know, I think that is 100% true. You know, honor him, and he'll honor you because he's done it in my life.
And like that's one of the big things too. Like when you see it, you got to obey it. And your conduct is what's gonna help your husband, kind of see the Lord. Because basically the word tells us, we can't try to nag our spouse or, force them to see things our way, but it all boils back to our own lives. That's what's so beautiful about the word. It always points us back to ourselves.
Mhm.
So we have no room to point at anybody else. I mean, that's how things change. And we stop
Yeah.
pointing at each other.
Yeah.
But God's word, it shows up.
Yeah, I remember something that you said in Bible study that I never forgot. You said, you were talking about yourself. You said if I compare myself to this other preacher or whatever who isn't preaching the word, I can look pretty good to myself. But when I compare myself to Christ, who's holy, and then I see a lot that I need to work on. And I never thought of it that way, and I noticed a lot of things where I was looking at others instead of looking at myself, or comparing myself to Christ instead of comparing myself to others. And so I never forgot that. That was really good. I loved that you said that.
Yeah, it's really important for us to see that. Guys, we have to take a 1 minute break, just 1 second. Okay, we'll be right back. Oh, you did? Thanks. Okay. All right, we're back. We had a little mishap here, so we just had to get something else plugged in really quickly. But you're kind of going into it already. Uh, but if you have any more sort of something you can share with the people just about what's your life like now since you've come to Christ, like how, what have you learned? Like I said, you've already shared quite a bit of that, but what have you learned? Um, how's God blessed you? What else has changed in your life, if there's anything like that, or other things about your perspective now, or just anything along those lines that you can share to sort of add on to what you already shared, like in other words, life after coming to the Lord.
Yeah. I would just say, like, the peace is, like, I never would have ever imagined that my life would be so peaceful and with no sort of drama or excitement, or as people, say, but it's like I never would go back to fun or stuff like that, and 23. I gave up drinking at 21, and it's like,
Supposed to start closing.
yeah, and it's just I would never go back to doing any of the things I was doing before. Not, staying out with my friends, having even just like simple things like that I was doing, but it was still worldly, like girls' night or stuff like that. And I wouldn't go back to drinking, and I would smoke, and I would, be around everybody and be, party with everybody. And those things that people so badly don't want to give up because they think, that's the fun. Oh, my life would be so boring if I didn't do that. And me, as a 23-year-old, I would not go back to that ever. And I feel like some people would look at me and think that I was crazy for saying that. But once you feel the peace that you have, that God gives you, and how He changes your life, and even peace when things aren't going your way, or things aren't going the way that you want them to, or the way that you think that they should go, you still have peace.
Yeah.
And even just the hell's my train of thought.
Having peace and
Yeah,
negative things happening.
yeah, and it's not coming back to me. Yeah, just living for the Lord is so much more rewarding than living for the world and doing all the things that, my past self would have been like, oh, I'm never going to stop doing these things, even, the peace that you have when people are looking at you like you're weird or you're different, or
what happened to you?
yeah, and persecuting you and things like that. It's, you still, even then, have joy and peace, because like for me, it's like, I have to remind myself that I know that that's what His Word says is going to happen. And if it didn't play out that way, then His Word wouldn't be true, and it is true, and it plays out just the way that He says it is. And so you get joy from that. What I'm following is obviously the truth, because I see it happening. Everything that it says is happening.
Like that. God says He gives peace, but not the way the world gives you peace. So you talked about earlier, when you want to be accepted or you're insecure, that's what gives you peace, is if somebody will let you be a part of that group and not look at you like you're different. God says, no matter what it is, it's always a different kind of peace that God gives. In other words, you don't need everything to go your way, or you don't need the quote popularity or any of those things. But what you said is really, really important, because I know a lot of people struggle with that. I know I did. I know Bobby's talked about it, and others too. That's one of the things that the devil's going to whisper in our ear when we really want to change. We see that I'm not really saved, and I need to really follow God, and maybe the fear of going to hell comes upon you, or maybe the love of Jesus. Like, I really want to follow Him. I see His beauty, and I want to follow Him. There's always this nagging voice in the back of your mind that says it's going to be too hard to give these things up, or it's not fun being with those very Christians who, hang out at 7 at night reading the Bible and things like that.
Yeah, that's another thing. Like, I can recognize the enemy now, and I feel like I don't want to portray it as I never struggle or I never mess up or things like that, because I still do, but the difference between then and now, and this is what I want people to understand when I talk to people before, I've wanted, to get it across that it's not the fact that you don't still mess up, because, the famous words of people, nobody's perfect and things like that. But when you're truly following, yes, you're not perfect. And even if you don't catch it at that time, at that moment, you can notice that you did it and turn away from it for the next time or apologize. Or I've noticed just like when like me and my husband get in an argument, I'll think to myself, because in the moment like that, your flesh and the enemy is just like, you just have so much anger, you just want so badly to say what you want to say, and you have so much pride, you just want to, you're right and I'm right and you're wrong and kind of thing, and you can't, and it's like hard to see it in the moment, but like I noticed, like if once I humble myself, like if there was an argument that was gonna start and I'm like, oh, I know I'm right. I won't say anything. I'll just go to my room and I'll pray. And it's so crazy because my husband will come in a minute, 2 minutes later and apologize. And it's like, I know how badly that would have escalated if I would have jumped in, and I don't know if it was Bobby or Melody or both of them that said, Zach Poonen had said about the clapping hands, and I've tried to remember that a lot about the clapping hands, is if I go back at him when he's angry, it's just gonna be
Noise.
Yeah, and it's never gonna end well. It's never gonna end the way that I want it. And in the moment, you can't see that's the way that it's gonna end. But like once I stepped back and I prayed and I went to my room and I saw how things played out when I humbled myself, it's like I could see, like, they always do the playbacks in the movies or whatever, like this is, of what would have happened or whatever, and it's like I can see that in my head, what would have happened. I can see exactly how it would have went, and it wouldn't have been good. And so it is hard, and I still struggle, and sometimes I do, come back and say something when I shouldn't, but I'm able to recognize it and take a step back and apologize in what you're saying. And that's the difference between nobody's perfect. Some people saying nobody's perfect and using it as an excuse, than striving to be Christ-like, and striving to be as Christ was. Like, I know I'm not perfect. I know I still struggle, but I'm gonna do my very best to, align with what God's word says, and I'm gonna try every day.
I think one of the biggest things that changes is when you talk about, you're not perfect or I'm not perfect, is not that you stop sinning. That never changes. We're always going to sin. But although we'll leave a whole lot of sin behind, and as the years go by, we'll overcome even sin that's hidden to us. But I think that the main changes is we start to hate sin. It's either when we're not living for Christ, it's either we don't care about sin, like it doesn't bother us one way or the other if we do something wrong, or we love our sin, but we never hate our sin until we come to Christ. And so that, to me, that's a big thing that helps me along with. Yeah, I'm not perfect at overcoming sin, but I hate it when I sin. In other words, there's no longer any joy or no longer any happiness. Sin isn't fun anymore. I can't enjoy myself being sinful. If I were to try it, I wouldn't be happy. I'd be miserable. So I think that's what a lot of people miss too when they hear you preaching about righteousness, overcoming, or striving for perfection. All they can see is you think you're perfect. Nobody's perfect. So no, it's just I hate sin now. That's what happens as a result of being born again. That's a big difference between the two. But is there anything else that you wanted to touch on that you had on your mind? Or anything that you wanted to share that you wanted to come on and make sure you said before before we wrap it up?
I did. I had a lot of things. Should have wrote them down.
Well, I mean, it's been really awesome. It's been really good and really helpful. I know it's going to help people out there, the things you said. Like I said, so many of the things you said are really important. And it's one thing if I say it, it's another thing if, especially if you're talking about young girls, it's another thing to hear it from somebody who's been exactly in their shoes. What you said can help anybody, but it's sad to see how, the youth in general, young people in general, and the youth, and also young girls, things that they're facing today. Like you said, there's so much enticement to go into all this wickedness that they think is going to make them happy, and like you said, it just doesn't.
And it's. I feel like it's getting just easier for them to give into it because everybody says it's okay. Everybody, the majority of the people are, egging it on or telling them, oh, it's okay, they're just young, or giving them an excuse pretty much. And that's another thing that I didn't get to share that I wanted to share is I've always said that I don't want to be the parent when it comes to my daughter. I don't want to be the parent that says, and my son, but I don't want to be the parent that says, do what I say, not what I do. I want to be the parent that says, do what I do. And I want to be the example because I just can't see it being, and before I didn't see any problem with those where, I'm an adult and you're not. And, but now I don't feel right telling my daughter she can't do something, but showing her something totally different. Because even though you think, I don't want to say that they might have told me, I just didn't listen to them, but they might have said not to do some of the things that I was doing.
Yeah.
Well, I think they did. I'm pretty sure they did. No. They, tell me not to do it, but then I saw them doing it, and so it's like that's disregarded. Like, you're doing it, why can't I? And things like that. And when adults say, well, I'm an adult and you're not, it just has no, like, it doesn't, like, I didn't listen to that.
Yeah.
It's like, it doesn't matter. And so as a parent, I always, when I had Josie, I always said, I want to be an example. And I want to, if I'm getting onto her for something, I want to be able to examine myself and say, am I doing these things? Do I need to quit doing these things? Or stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to share that too.
Yeah. That's a really good point. not to be the do as I say, not as I do. But it's like the Apostle Paul says, follow me as I follow Christ. And if we're going to say that to the church, we definitely got to say that to our kids first. If we have our husband, our wife, whoever, our spouse, that's a beautiful thing to have in your heart. And say, I want to be able to say that. I want to be able to say there's no hypocrisy in that.
Another thing, the biggest thing that helped me is examining myself always when it comes to my husband or when it comes to people around me. If I'm and I know Bobby has said this too, when somebody else is getting on your nerves or whatever, look at yourself and ask yourself, why is this bothering me? And that's a hard thing, I think, for a lot of people to do. Is that's the big thing for me was I needed to change. Not everybody around me. I needed to change. And that was the biggest thing in my relationship was I had to realize that sure the things that he had done maybe weren't they weren't very good, but I still had stuff that I needed to work on that wasn't very good, that I needed to turn away from or correct. And I can't change him. I can only change myself.
Right.
And I can only, I can't, like you said, you can't force them to know the Lord, or so you have to show by your conduct. And when I say I can only fix myself, I mean God can only fix myself, because I can't do anything.
You gotta look at yourself.
Yeah, and I think that's a big. I was talking to a girl the other day, and I don't know her very well. I don't know her walk, but one thing that she's going through something similar that I went through, and one thing that she said is she was talking about herself, things that she feels like she did, and I told her, I was like, that's a big step, is examining yourself and looking at yourself.
It's one of the hardest things to do, or to realize you need to do in the first place. You always want to be a better person.
It's all about humbling yourself. That's like, I remember when that was the biggest thing when I was just first following. It was like I had to remember to humble myself. And even realizing what it meant to humble myself. Like, not just humble yourself in the little things, but like humble yourself to the lowest extent. Like, I feel like that's what it comes down to a lot, is humbling yourself, because you have to humble yourself to recognize what you're doing wrong. And you have to humble yourself to be able to walk away from a situation that you know you're right in. And pride is the biggest thing. I think the biggest sin, I feel like, if that was in my life, especially my relationship, was pride. And it's just, like I said before, there's a clapping hand. Because he was prideful, I was prideful, and we can't both be right. This kind of thing it was with us. But
Zach says it's 3 keys to Christian life: humility, humility, humility. And that's so true. That's really what it all boils down to.
yeah.
If you want to grow, you gotta humble yourself. Okay, I'll leave the ball in your court. If you want to keep going, if you have anything to share with us.
I think that was it.
All right, well, thanks for sharing your testimony with us. Like I said, it was really, really helpful with the things that you shared that I know people out there need to hear. And I just hope and pray this reaches people, our church, the body of Christ that we have. Pray that I hope that y'all will share it with somebody. Because again, like I said, y'all heard what she had to say, and you know that the things that we learn every week, and things that we talk about, she's given some examples for people to look into, especially, well, for anybody, but especially for the younger ones who really need to hear what she said. So I hope y'all will share this with others. It's a message that's needed. She said she had a lot of things that she wanted to say that she might have forgot, so we might come back again, because I want to start coming back with some of the others who I talked to already, Bobby Melody. So who knows, maybe I'll come back and get some more. That's the reason why it's powerful, is because it's from a personal relationship with Jesus. That's why we're doing this, so that God can be glorified, and that others can see that and have that relationship. All right. Any closing statements for the people out there? Anything you want to share with anybody to end it?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, thank y'all for joining us on this live, and we'll see y'all next time. God bless y'all.